581 The situation in the chaos. 17th was most likely killed by someone who wanted to save that person. 7th and 9th are nearby. You two should go and investigate. Kill the person who dared to offend the dignity of Lord Prison Dao Ancient God. After the mission was assigned, the illusory figure continue searching for Qin. We must find his tracks. The leader will deal with him personally. Yes. A figure flew out of the prison god palace and entered the chaos. Somewhere in the distance, a chaos mountain was floating about. A figure stood on the mountain. It was as if he had become one with the chaos mountain, as his body did not exude an ounce of aura. It was as if he was in an extreme state and could unleash an ultimate attack at any time. His eyes were emotionless as he silently watched the prison god palace from a distance. There was not just one prison god palace, but 3. Few people dared to provoke them. Reincarnation. The person murmured softly, almost inaudibly. In the depths of chaos, a terrifying black figure swept toward a small abyss. It opened its mouth and started to devour the abyss. In front of the black mist, a few figures were frantically trying to escape. They were all World Creator Realm experts. Boom. The abyss was devoured, leaving behind an empty space. The black figure gradually solidified and transformed into a giant that was 1,000,000 feet tall. It stretched its hand out. No matter what the World Creator Realm experts did, they were unable to escape, and were all caught. A terrifying power erupted, and black light blossomed, instantly annihilating them in their Dao paths. Then, it opened its mouth and sucked in the power of the shattered Dao paths. Burp. It burped, as if it had eaten its fill. Its aura grew a little stronger, and it turned into a terrifying black figure again, continuing to move forward in the chaos. The direction this figure was heading in was where the 9 zones were. A sage-like old man sat cross-legged on a lotus platform and floated in the chaos in the direction of the 9 zones. The divine and extraordinary existence in golden armor walked toward the 9 zones step by step. A figure that was burning with demonic flames and had an overbearing aura grabbed a living being that was passing by and casually crushed it. This figure was also heading toward the 9 zones. In the chaos abyss, the corpse suddenly trembled slightly. The martial intent gradually condensed with an unyielding will. Chu Zan was unaware of all of this, and was immersed in cultivation. His strength grew rapidly. When the 82-year milestone arrived, Chu Zan awakened from his cultivation to receive the system's rewards, which were the same as the previous year's rewards. He did exactly the same thing as he did then, except this time, the other portion of the chaotic energy of creation entered the reincarnation Great Tao principle instead of the origin Tao rings Great Tao. As the chaotic energy of creation was injected, the reincarnation cycle began to transform. Han Yu and Ji suddenly woke up from their cultivation, shocked. What kind of power was this? The reincarnation cycle could actually give birth to creation energy. This was a great opportunity. The two of them immediately began to comprehend it. Qi also sensed this, as he had also broken through to the Daoyuan realm. He had merged himself into the reincarnation cycle. As long as the reincarnation cycle existed, he would not die. After doing all that, Chu Zan continued to immerse himself in cultivation. Time passed by in cultivation, and the changes in the 9 zones continued, giving birth to more divine realm and Dao realm experts. Even some of the older experts experienced a period of rapid improvement. The overall strength of the 9 zones was rapidly increasing. In the heavenly domain, the Daoyuan realm experts spent most of their time in secluded cultivation. They had never experienced such rapid progress in their cultivation before. Hong Yuanchu had already reached the 1,000-mile mark, which was something that he had been dreaming of for a long time. Mo Tu's strength had also grown rapidly, and he was not much weaker than Hong Yuanchu. In the New World, the innate lifeforms were born as Emperor Realm cultivators. Although they knew nothing about cultivation, their instincts drove them to strengthen themselves. The battle on the ancient path intensified, and the cultivators of the 9 zones worked together to resist the attacks of the abyssal beings. Of course, a portion of the abyssal beings still managed to escape the net. However, because they targeted the stronger abyssal beings, only the weaker ones made it through. These would be dealt with by the various races in the 9 zones. The 83-year milestone was approaching, and Chu Zan felt that his cultivation had reached a critical point. He would welcome a transformation at any time and reach a higher level. His Dao path was already 9 million miles long. The words he had once bragged about had really come true. Chu Zan sighed. He should probably update his bragging. He awakened from his cultivation. If he wanted to complete the transformation and break through the critical point, he would need some time to consolidate his cultivation foundation. This would not take too long. A year's time was enough for him to break through. Looking at the 9 zones, he found that there were some new races. It turned out that some abyssal beings had successfully escaped the chaos abyss and become living beings of the 9 zones. This also enriched the diversity of living beings under the heavenly Tao laws, which was a good thing. What surprised him was, in the new world, the human race had appeared. There were not many of them, and they were relatively weak compared to the other innate lifeforms. However, in terms of intelligence, they surpassed the latter. Chuzan decided to spread the cultivation method in the new world. With a single thought, a golden steel descended from the sky and landed in the territory of the human race. As the strange phenomenon descended, the humans immediately prostrated themselves on the ground and began to study the golden steel. They gradually entered a state of enlightenment, understood the words, and memorized the cultivation method. There was not just one golden steel. The human race had one. The other innate lifeforms also had one. There were also a few golden stels hidden in the other areas where no living beings had yet to set foot. The rise of the human race in the new world depended on whether these humans had enough talent. Chuzan felt that the possibility was very high. One had to know that the human race was blessed by the heavenly Tao laws. Chuzan did not favor the human race, but the heavenly Tao laws naturally blessed the human race as it had devoured a portion of the great Tao of the 9 zones, which also blessed the human race. Furthermore, the creator of the heavenly Tao laws was Chuzan, a human. As the innate lifeforms in the new world would require time to develop, Chuzan turned his attention elsewhere. He took out the Chaos Tao mirror to observe the battle on the ancient path. Heiyu was about to reach the Daoyuan realm, and Dingyu and the others were not too far behind. Perhaps Chuzan would soon receive a pleasant surprise from the system. Outside the 9 zones, the Great Formation was undergoing its final inspection. Soon, they would activate it and try to enter the 9 zones. Chuzan looked at the region of the chaos near the 9 zones and suddenly noticed someone hidden on a chaos mountain. It was silent and its aura was concealed. It was Pan Shan, whose injuries seemed to have mostly recovered. He was waiting for a chance. He had not given up yet. Once the Great Formation was activated, he would also try to sneak into the 9 zones. 582 Heiyu's Breakthrough Part 1. Everyone was eyeing the 9 zones and waiting for an opportunity to enter. Tai, long time no see. Tai was too lazy to answer. This B*** came looking for him every few days. He could not rest and heal his wounds. Tai, what do you think of the 9 zones? Tai laughed. So you've been keeping an eye on the 9 zones. You don't have any opinion on the 9 zones. The 9 zones are the first world born from the chaos, after all, and they contain special opportunities. However, who can obtain the opportunities within? Don't forget that there used to be many experts in the 9 zones. Who among them obtained great fortune from the 9 zones? Can the opportunities of the 9 zones really help us when our strength has reached our level? Tai suddenly sighed and said, even if a great opportunity exists, no one can obtain it. Otherwise, why would the ancestors of immortal, celestial, and demon races, the 4 divine beasts, and the other experts of the 9 zones leave and escape into the chaos? Chuzan listened silently and felt that it made sense. There was a limit to the opportunities of the 9 zones. It was not prepared for the strong, but for the living beings of the 9 zones with great potential and outstanding talent. For example, Dingyu and the others. Some of those great opportunities were also useful to world creator experts, but they were ultimately limited. The chaos was boundless, so how could the opportunities in the 9 zones compare? In that case, why do you want to enter the 9 zones now? You really don't know? Tai asked in surprise. I'm just an idle person, how would I know? Chuzan did not hide anything and directly replied. A great change is about to happen in the chaos. The 9 zones, as the first world, is where disasters are avoided and opportunities are gathered. Moreover, each race originally came from the 9 territories, and only by returning to the 9 territories can their races continue to grow stronger. Otherwise, there would eventually be a gap. Tai explained after a moment of silence. Chuzan nodded. He was curious about what the great change in the chaos was. The constant changes in the 9 zones have already attracted the attention of various forces in the chaos. Many experts are probably rushing over. Some of the supreme experts of the 9 zones, especially from the 3 major races, will return, Tai continued. Chuzan was startled. Were the 9 zones popular now? The Great Tao is rejecting them, so who can enter the 9 zones? Chu Zan was puzzled. The power of rejection of the Great Tao won't exist forever. The Great Tao was born from the chaos. A true Great Tao has its own laws and order. Because of an unknown change, the power of rejection appeared. However, it's not impossible to restore the Great Tao to its previous state. One just needs to remove the factor that caused the Great Tao to reject them, and the rejection will naturally disappear. Tai felt that Chu Zan was too lacking in knowledge. Although it takes time and effort to eliminate the power of rejection of the Great Tao, with so many powerful cultivators gathered together, it will eventually be done, unless the Great Tao has a master and is controlled by someone else. However, do you think that's possible? That is the number one Great Tao of the chaos. It belongs to the chaos. Who could control it? Even someone as powerful as the ancient chaos gods would not be on the same level as the Great Tao of the 9 zones. Tai chuckled and said with a hint of disdain, "You're too lacking in knowledge." Chu Zan laughed in his heart. The Great Tao of the 9 zones did not have a master. In the future, the Great Tao would not exist. Only the Heavenly Tao laws would. Furthermore, he was the master of the Heavenly Tao laws. Chu Zan chuckled. "You idiot, you're underestimating the power of rejection of the Great Tao. You're also overestimating those so-called experts." Tai was furious. "Who are you calling an idiot? Are you Chu, but pretending not to be so that you can trick me?" Chu Zan's expression was strange. Tai was so angry that he mistook him for Chu again. It was clear that Chu Li had called him idiot many times. "You're really an idiot. I'm not Chu. You're the dumb one," Tai said angrily. "Forget it, I won't tease you anymore. Just wait, I'll give you a treasure very soon to help you recover from your injuries." Chuckling, Chu Zan deactivated the mirror. The 9 zones were calm and peaceful, other than the ancient path. Chu Zan was not worried about the experts in the chaos entering the 9 zones. The majority of the Great Tao was under the control of the Heavenly Tao laws, so he could maintain the power of rejection. Without his permission, it was impossible to break through. The 83-year milestone was about to arrive, and Heiyu was returning to the 9 zones. She was going to open her Tao path. "You've remained in seclusion for 83 years, and your cultivation has improved rapidly. You have been rewarded with world origin energy and the chaotic energy of creation." The reward for this milestone was the same as before, except that it was of a slightly higher level. Chu Zan received his reward, and repeated his usual actions. Heiyu had returned. She had already reached the critical point and could step into the Daoyuan realm. However, she was ultimately different from ordinary cultivators, as her innate divine soul was formed by the laws of the chaos. "Master, how should I open my Tao path?" Heiyu had returned to the courtyard. "How do you want to open your Tao path?" Chu Zan asked. Heiyu remained silent for a moment and asked, "I'm leaving the 9 zones for the chaos, so should I use the Heavenly Tao laws as the foundation or the Great Tao as the foundation? After reaching the Daoyuan realm, how do we head to the chaos without our Tao paths being restricted?" "There is no difference between using either as the foundation. For you, there are actually only 2 choices. 1. Open your Tao path in the 9 zones, and 2. Open your Tao path in the chaos," Chu Zan said meaningfully. Heiyu was stunned. There was no difference between the Heavenly Tao laws and the Great Tao. Why was there no difference? She had some guesses in her heart. It was a little hard to believe. The Great Tao and the Heavenly Tao laws were fusing. Or was it the Heavenly Tao laws devouring the Great Tao? How does one open their Tao path in the chaos? Heiyu asked. Tao paths opened in the chaos have no foundation. They are fragile and need a long time to stabilize, unless you have a supreme treasure to stabilize the foundation of your Tao path. Chu Zan thought for a moment. After all, Heiyu was not an ordinary cultivator. Her innate divine soul was special. Opening her Tao path in the chaos might not necessarily have these drawbacks, just like the ancient chaos gods, who were born as Daoyuan realm existences. The weakness of opening one's Tao path in the chaos might only be applicable to the races of the 9 zones in the ancient chaos world. You might be exempt from these drawbacks, but in the current chaotic situation, you should know the potential dangers, Chu Zan added. Heiyu nodded silently. In fact, she already had an answer in her heart. Master, if I leave the 9 zones and enter the chaos after opening my Tao path using the Heavenly Tao laws as the foundation, will my strength be weakened? The Heavenly Tao laws are the Heavenly Tao laws, and your Tao path is your Tao path. If your cultivation level is sufficient, it will have no effect on you, Chu Zan explained to Heiyu. The Heavenly Tao laws and the Heiyu had a deep relationship, and her opening up her Tao path in the Heavenly Tao laws had extraordinary meaning. Chu Zan explained how cultivation in the Daoyuan realm worked, as well as his experience. Black Moon listened quietly. After Chuzan finished his explanation, he waved his hand and a ball of chaotic energy of creation appeared. This was the chaotic energy of creation generated by his body, which was weaker than that generated by the system's reward. However, it was still a treasure, especially to those looking to open their Tao paths. This is the chaotic energy of creation, it can help you open your Tao path. Thank you, Master. Heiyu was extremely excited. Her innate divine soul seemed to be attracted to the chaotic energy of creation. This was unprecedented, not even supreme treasures could make it feel this way. After receiving the chaotic energy of creation and absorbing it into her body, Heiyu thanked her and left. 3 days later, a figure appeared amidst the heavenly Tao laws. It was Heiyu. Thanks to the nourishment of the chaotic energy of creation, she had undergone some transformations. Boom! A Tao path extended from the heavenly Tao laws. Chuzan looked on silently. With Heiyu's talent and the help of his chaotic energy of creation, it should be possible for her to extend her path by a few hundred miles from the get-go, though 1,000 miles might be too much to hope for. It was likely the restrictions of the ancient path would ease after this, allowing certain Daoyuan realm existences to enter. This would increase the pressure on the 9 zones. However, this might also not be the case. Daoyuan realm abyssal beings had clearer minds and were not as blindly crazy as Dao realm abyssal beings. If they discovered that Heiyu could help them escape the abyss, they might not continue to fight. Of course, once this happened, the likelihood of prison Dao ancient god coming over to seek him out would increase. Chuzan then turned his attention to the 9 zones. There were a few 36th level Dao realm cultivators who had touched the threshold of the Daoyuan realm. Thus, they had returned to the 9 zones to consolidate their foundation and wait for an opportunity to break through. Thanks to the changes in the 9 zones, it had become much easier to cultivate. Back then, it would have taken 10,000 years of secluded cultivation to reach the Daoyuan realm from the peak of the Dao realm. However, this had now been reduced to a year, or even 10 years, which was simply unbelievable. If Hong Yuanshu and the other Daoyuan realm experts in the heavenly domain knew about this, they would probably lament that they were born at the wrong time. After Heiyu opened her Dao path, the ancient path began to change. Her innate divine soul also underwent another transformation, and the heavenly Dao laws expanded rapidly, devouring 60% of the great Dao of the 9 zones. Her breakthrough lasted 8 months, and her Dao path was 700 miles long when it was done. Her starting point had already far surpassed countless Daoyuan realm cultivators. Furthermore, because she was unique, it would not take long for her to consolidate her cultivation foundation before continuing to extend her Dao path. She would probably not encounter any difficulties until the 10,000-mile mark. Boom! After that, in the 9 zones, someone else reached the Daoyuan realm under the heavenly Dao laws. This was Chuzan's intention. Soon, there would be more and more of them, and they would all contribute to the growth of the heavenly Dao laws. Furthermore, under the heavenly Dao laws, they would not be bound by the same restrictions as the great Dao. They would not need to sever the source of their Dao path, or undergo 9 great Dao calamities in order to surpass the 9 extreme Daoyuan realm. In the heavenly domain, Hong Yuanshu opened his eyes. Someone was opening the Dao path in the 9 zones. Furthermore, it was not just one person. Was it because of the great abyssal calamity? Heiyu's body moved and she reappeared in the heavenly domain. Hong Yuanshu, Ruoxian, Kunhe, and the other human Daoyuan realm cultivators appeared. Greetings, seniors, Heiyu said, bowing. Good, good, the human race has another new Daoyuan realm expert. Hong Yuanshu was overjoyed. You must be Ancestor Hong, right? Heiyu looked at him. The ancestor was one of the experts who had led the human race to rise up. Since you've already reached the Daoyuan realm, it's not appropriate to call me Ancestor Hong. You can just call me Taoist Brother Hong or Senior Brother Hong, Hong Yuanshu chuckled. Then, the human race Daoyuan realm experts introduced themselves. They were all very shocked. Heiyu had just entered the Daoyuan realm, but her cultivation foundation was extremely stable, and she was much stronger than when they had first reached the Daoyuan realm. If it were not for their great progress in recent years, their strength might not even be as good as Heiyu's current strength. Was this the fortune of the 9 zones? Mo Tu appeared. He was wearing a monk's robe and had a kind look. He put his hands together. Very good, very good. Benefactor Heiyi, you should pay your respects. I am Arhat Mo Tu of the Buddhist sect. Hong Yuanshu and Ruoxian looked awkward when they saw Mo Tu's expression. Their old nemesis from back then, the arrogant and overbearing old demon, had suddenly become like this. No matter how they looked at it, it felt awkward. Heiyu's face remained emotionless the entire time. She nodded slightly and said, "Greetings, Arhat Mo too." The other races also came to meet her and introduced themselves. There were not too many Daoyuan realm cultivations in the 9 zones, so it was necessary for them to get to know each other. Heiyu also established her own residence in the heavenly domain. Moon Palace. Soon, the system's reward arrived. Your disciple Heiyu, under your guidance, has broken through to the Daoyuan realm. You have been rewarded with a new Dao principle and a 100,000-mile Dao path extension. Chuzan's current cultivation was no longer just about extending his Dao path. Instead, he would derive new Dao principles and connect them to the 3,000 chaos bodies, connecting them until they formed a whole. A new Dao principle emerged from a mass of chaotic energy and connected with his Dao path. Even though it was only a 100,000-mile extension, Chuzan's strength still increased. After establishing her residence, Heiyu did not stay in the heavenly domain. Instead, she went over to the gate of the ancient path and stood in front of it. She was not restricted by the ancient path. For some reason, she had the urge to release the abyssal beings, and it was something that came from her innate divine soul. My lord, Heiyu looked at the 236th level Dao realm abyssal beings. One of them was especially special. Let's go to the 9 zones and open your Dao paths. Yes, my lord. The 2 abyssal beings were extremely excited as they stepped into the 9 zones. They were going to their Dao paths in the 9 zones. They had completely escaped from the chaos abyss. Chuzan looked at the abyssal beings. They were rather special, and their Dao paths would provide a reference for the heavenly Dao laws to derive new laws. Heiyu looked at the rest of the abyssal beings and said, "Continue to kill the enemies and stop them from entering the 9 zones." Yes, my lord, there were countless abyssal beings, and Heiyu could not save them all. Those who were saved by her were those with great potential and talent. Or rather, they were special abyssal beings. To these abyssal beings, Heiyu was like a parent, giving them a new life. Killing the abyssal beings was also a form of release. It was also a way to strengthen one's life imprint and obtain the fate of the great Tao. To the abyssal beings, death was a form of release, and freedom from the endless torture. Heiyu looked at the ancient path silently. Although she could not see the end of it, she knew that Daoyuan realm abyssal beings would now be able to enter the ancient path, and would appear soon enough. By subduing Daoyuan realm abyssal beings, she would be able to quickly build a powerful force. Why did she save the abyssal beings? Heiyu did not quite understand either, but it seemed to be a desire ingrained within her. Would there be any consequences? Heiyu was a little absent-minded, wondering if she had been too rash in doing so. She had just broken through to the Daoyuan realm, and was not very strong. What if there was something behind the chaos abyss? Master, if I were to release the abyssal beings, what would happen? Heiyu muttered. What would the consequences be? Chuzan sighed in his heart. He finally understood why Heiyu wanted to release the abyssal beings. It was because her innate divine soul had once been damaged by a chaos abyss, which resulted in it being split into 2 portions. It seemed that her innate divine soul still remembered that incident. Even if he stopped Heiyu this time, she would still be unable to resist doing so when she became stronger. As her master, he could only support his disciple. In any case, he had to maintain his image in front of her. Consequences only matter to the weak, Chuzan said calmly. Once you're strong, all consequences are trivial. You can do whatever you want. With me around, those consequences are not worth mentioning. Heiyu understood, and her confidence grew. The release of the abyssal beings would certainly trigger a series of events. However, since her master could deal with the consequences, she would do as she wished. Heiyu's entire body relaxed. Thank you, master. Chuzan sighed. It was too difficult being a master. In order to maintain his powerful and invincible image, he could only encourage his disciples to cause trouble. Prison Dao Ancient God was very powerful, so he had to work to increase his strength before the former attacked. Therefore, Chuzan once again immersed himself in cultivation. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, the 85-year milestone was about to arrive. The great abyssal calamity was getting more and more intense, and there were already Daoyuan realm living beings that had entered the ancient path. For now, only those whose Dao paths were 1,000 miles long or less could enter the ancient path. The Daoyuan realm abyssal beings were all dealt with by Heiyu, and became her subordinates. One of the peak-level Dao realm experts of the 9 zones also finally broke through. However, his strength was far inferior to Heiyu's. Ding Yu and Chu Zan's other disciples also started to break through to the Daoyuan realm. 585 Chaos Weapon Furnace. Chu Zan also gave each of his disciples a ball of chaotic energy of creation. When they broke through, all of their Dao paths exceeded 500 miles. After each one reached the Daoyuan realm, the system rewarded Chu Zan with a 100,000-mile Dao path extension. Chu Zan was finally touching the 10 million mile mark, but he was still weaker than Prison Dao Ancient God, who he estimated had a 30 million mile long Dao path. Furthermore, Prison Dao Ancient God was obviously not the strongest ancient chaos god, and one could still transcend the chaos after that, or peak level existences like the Lord of Chaos. Exclamation mark! Who knew how many experts like the Lord of Chaos there were in the entire chaos? The next benchmark would be the Supreme Chaos Realm, which was the 100 million mile mark, and then transcend the chaos after. Given this, Chu Zan has only just stepped into the lower ranks of the top echelons of the chaos. He still had to work hard, and at least reach the Chaos Supreme Realm to be on the safe side. Chu Zan looked up. After his breakthrough, he could see the ancient chaos world without the help of the Chaos Dao Mirror. The experts of the various races were cautiously inspecting and testing the various sections of the Great Formation, afraid of a careless mistake causing it to fail. He then turned his gaze to the ancient path, where Ding Yu and the other disciples were still fighting. This time, their opponents were Daoyuan realm abyssal beings. Fortunately, there were not many of them, and a significant portion of the stronger ones had been converted by Heiyu. Kingslayer had already reached the 36th level of the Dao realm, and so had Chu Pingfan. Both were ready to break through to the Daoyuan realm. Among Chu Zan's personal disciples, only Qianming had yet to reach the Daoyuan realm. Feng Kong's strength grew rapidly. He had already reached the 30th level of the Dao realm. Xu Yang, Hong Yuanchu's best friend, had already reached the 36th level of the Dao realm and had returned to the 9 zones to seek an opportunity to break through to the Daoyuan realm. Hong Yuanchu should have prepared some treasures for this good friend of his. Luo Xinbai's strength had also grown rapidly, and he was now at the 36th level of the Dao realm. He had fought with Kingslayer, and using the power of the human king technique suppressed the latter. Even Kingslayer's extreme Dao was unable to break through. Luo Xinbai should be the descendant of the 6th ancestor Luo, who was likely a world creator realm expert. Luo's human king technique was extremely special. If he could unify the power of the human race, it was likely that he could burst out with even greater strength. Furthermore, its ability to heal wounds and restore life force was extraordinary. In a large-scale war, it gave the human race a very strong advantage. Chu Zan looked at the region of the chaos around the 9 zones for a while, but found nothing interesting. However, one of the special existences in the 9 zones did attract his attention. It was a corpse-like creature that was sleeping in a small spatial realm in the heavenly domain. Chu Zan was very curious. Which human was this? Which of the 10 ancestors of the human race had left an incarnation in the 9 zones? Furthermore, he had hidden himself so deeply. The incarnation seemed to only be a 9 extreme Daoyuan realm cultivator, but that was because it was dormant. Once it awakened, it was likely that its strength would rank among the stronger Freedom Daoyuan realm experts. Was it Chu? The first person Chu Zan thought of was the first ancestor of the human race, the sinister and cunning guy that Tai had mentioned. Such schemes did match his personality. Was he waiting for an opportunity? Chu Zan did not disturb this person. No matter what kind of scheme or plot there was in the 9 zones, it would be useless if he did not allow it. Other than this corpse-like incarnation, there was another thing that caught Chu Zan's attention. It was a huge head, which was also a powerful existence, but severely injured. Now, only its head and divine soul were left. It was a powerful chaotic being, or even an ancient chaos god. Chu Zan suspected that this existence was once an ancient chaos god. After suffering heavy injuries, it hid in the 9 zones and waited for an opportunity to recover. Its divine soul already contained a strong aura of the 9 zones, so it was likely that it was waiting for the right opportunity. Chu Zan shook his head. He would let it continue sleeping for now. The 85-year milestone was about to arrive. Qianming had finally started to break through to the Daoyuan realm. You have remained in seclusion for 85 years. Your cultivation progressed by leaps and bounds, as did the Heavenly Dao Talisman plan. Your actions have subtly affected the chaos. You have been rewarded with World Origin Energy and the Chaos Weapon Furnace. The 85-year milestone reward no longer included the chaotic energy of creation. Instead, there was a Chaos Weapon Furnace. Chu Zan examined it curiously. The chaos weapon furnace is formed by the laws of the chaos. It can create weapons that contain the laws of the chaos and can create one every 10,000 years. You can also put in materials to speed up the process. Chuzan was quite satisfied after reading the information. 10,000 years was too long, but he could add in materials to speed up the process. Furthermore, weapons that contained the laws of the chaos were considered true treasures in the entire chaos. Even world creator realm experts coveted these. It was time to give his disciples better equipment. Although they had each obtained an opportunity and had extraordinary supreme treasures, these treasures were not weapons. In any case, Chuzan did not lack materials. He placed the furnace into the pocket dimension and casually threw in a few materials to test it out. 586 Entering the Heavenly Tao Part 1. After putting in the materials, Chuzan turned his attention elsewhere as he waited for the furnace to do its thing. He looked at the power of calamity. It had already condensed into a giant egg. The Lord of Chaos was about to be born! Exclamation mark! Chuzan was looking forward to the birth of this little disciple. After devouring so much, and benefiting from Chuzan's painstaking efforts to improve the 9 zones, this little disciple should be aware of his existence, right? The birth of the Lord of Chaos would probably cause some changes. Would the great abyssal calamity end? It would probably attract the attention of even more experts. Chuzan prepared to contact Huang Long. It was time to implement a long-planned plan. Now, the heavenly Tao laws had devoured 7/10 of the great Tao, it was time. Chuzan pondered for a moment. For safety's sake, he took out the Chaos Tao mirror and began to scan the region of the chaos surrounding the 9 zones. This was to see if there were any experts on his level hiding in the chaos. Fortunately, he did not find any. Chuzan then contacted Huang Long. Fellow Taoist Huang Long, do you want to leave the great Tao and obtain freedom? Fellow Taoist Chu, do you have any solutions regarding this? Huang Long asked joyfully. There have been some changes in the great Tao. You should have sensed it, right? Chuzan asked with a smile. As a creature of the great Tao, Huang Long could naturally sense the changes in the great Tao. However, neither he nor Yi Yujun had not investigated it, hoping that something would happen that would allow them to leave the great Tao. I sensed it, Huang Long nodded. Taoist Chu, could it be that the opportunity to escape the great Tao is related to these changes? Yes, Chuzan nodded. Taoist Huang Long, now that the heavenly Tao laws have been created, they have assimilated more than half of the great Tao. In the future, the heavenly Tao laws will replace the great Tao. The heavenly Tao laws? Huang Long was puzzled. You can think of it as another great Tao, Chuzan explained. Huang Long nodded silently. The heavenly Tao laws should be related to Taoist Chu. None of this was important. As long as he could be free, he was not bothered about the great Tao or the heavenly Tao laws. What do I have to do to break away from the great Tao? It's very simple. Fellow Taoist Huang Long only needs to enter the heavenly Tao and become a creature of the heavenly Tao. Then, you'll be able to leave the great Tao. This was Chuzan's plan. Huang Long was a creature of the great Tao. If he left the great Tao and became a creature of the heavenly Tao, it would weaken the fate of the great Tao and strengthen the fate of the heavenly Tao. The heavenly Tao laws would then use this opportunity to quickly infiltrate the great Tao and fuse with the laws of time that was related to Huang Long. If I become a creature of the heavenly Tao, won't I be trapped within the heavenly Tao instead? Of course not. The heavenly Tao doesn't restrict living beings. Really, naturally, after fellow Taoist Huang Long transforms into a creature of the heavenly Tao, your powers will not be affected. In fact, you'll become even stronger. Alright, Huang Long muttered, but how do I become a creature of the heavenly Tao? It's simple. Chuzan sent a talisman over. I'm going to transform you into a creature of the heavenly Tao right now. Under Chuzan's guidance, Huang Long quickly arrived at the intersection between the heavenly Tao and the great Tao. After absorbing the talisman, Huang Long let out a roar and his huge dragon body appeared. Time flowed along his body. Chuzan raised his head. Huang Long had returned to his original form and was at his peak. His strength was also on display, which was comparable to an expert who had a million-mile-long Tao path. Boom! Huang Long plunged into the heavenly Tao. One could see the heavenly Tao laws travel across his body, slowly incorporating the laws of time. There was some turbulence in the great Tao, but only for a brief moment. There were also some changes in the 9 zones. Time briefly froze, but then continued again. Those who cultivated secret techniques related to time suddenly realized that their comprehension of time had increased greatly. Some of the profound mysteries that were difficult to understand were all comprehended at this moment. A few hidden existences opened their eyes. All of them were dumbfounded. How could there be another change in the 9 zones after only a few years? Time had changed. It was getting more and more confusing. It was also because of this that it was even more obvious that the great change that was about to happen was a great opportunity, an excellent opportunity for recovery. In the heavenly domain, the corpse-like incarnation opened his eyes again. Something was not quite right. What was going on? He then closed his eyes and fell into a deep sleep. It was the same for the giant head. It was really strange. They felt that the time had not yet come. In the chaos, the experts of the various races stood in front of the formation and looked at the 9 zones in confusion. They were not ready, yet another change had happened in the 9 zones. The laws of time appeared. It should be known that the calculation of time in the chaos was based on the 9 zones, so the change in time in the 9 zones not only affected the 9 zones but also the laws of time of the entire chaos. Why did time change? Even Venerable, he, who was considered an ancient existence, was dumbfounded. He had never seen something like this happen before. Could it be that an expert was using some sort of secret time technique, causing this phenomenon to appear? However, thinking about it again, this was not possible. There probably was not a single expert in the entire chaos who could cause such a phenomenon, much less the 9 zones. The laws of time were among the most difficult to comprehend. As such, it was very likely that this phenomenon was related to the great Tao of the 9 zones. They could not wait much longer, and had to go all out. It seemed that changes would continue to appear if they waited. The changes also attracted the attention of Hong Yuanchu and the other Daoyuan realm cultivators of the 9 zones. However, at their level, they had no idea what had happened. Only Hong Yuanchu, Mo Tu, and the stronger Daoyuan realm cultivators could vaguely sense that it seemed to be related to the laws of time. The first thing they thought of was Huanglong. Was Taoist Huanglong using the laws of time? In any case, this was beyond their scope of understanding, so they decided to focus on cultivating. After all, the 9 zones were still very safe. Everything was within Chuzan's expectations. Everything was within his control. As Huanglong transformed into a creature of the heavenly Tao, the rate at which the heavenly Tao laws devoured the great Tao increased. In a short time, it had increased from 70% to 80%. Yi Yujun was also moved by this. In fact, he desired freedom even more than Huanglong, and often explored the boundaries of the great Tao to try and find a way to escape the great Tao. Chuzan also sent a talisman to Yi Yujun. Just as the time phenomenon subsided, darkness appeared. In the chaos, the experts of the various races were once again dumbfounded. In the 9 zones, darkness appeared. It was as if a ball of ink was tainting the world. What had happened in the 9 zones? The experts of the various races immediately contacted Hong and asked Yang to descend into the 9 zones again with his wisp of consciousness to investigate the situation. They did not even hesitate to make many promises. However, they soon discovered that Yang's wisp of consciousness was unable to descend upon the 9 zones. It was rejected. There had to have been some changes in the 9 zones. Some amazing opportunity must have surfaced. The experts of the various races were burning with excitement. They sped up the inspection of the formation again. They had to enter the 9 zones as soon as possible. The longer they delayed, the more likely they were to miss a great opportunity. Although Gui Ran did not have such a strong desire to break away from the great Tao, he did not want to be stuck here either. Sleeping in a different environment sounded like a wonderful thing too. Naturally, Chuzan gave him a talisman too. Boom. Gui Ran also began to transform into a creature of the heavenly Tao. At this moment, the entire 9 zones seemed to be weighed down by something, like it was covered by a giant shell. In the chaos, the experts of the various races were already numb. They could only watch helplessly. It would take some time for Huanglong and the other 2 to completely transform into creatures of the heavenly Tao. The heavenly spirit cat and the sky-shaking golden rock ran up and looked at the 3 of them. The spirit-devouring flower was here as well. The plan was very successful. After accelerating the expansion of the heavenly Tao laws once again, Chuzan continued to cultivate. He was still not strong enough, and wanted to reach the Chaos Supreme Realm as soon as possible. Time always passed especially fast when one was cultivating. In the blink of an eye, the 88-year milestone was about to arrive. Chu Pingfan and Su Shaner had both reached the Daoyuan realm, while Feng Kong was on the verge of doing so. As had Luo Xinbai, Kingslayer and Xu Yang. After Xu Yang reached the Daoyuan realm, he ran over to find Mo Tu. In the end, he was dumbfounded. Mo Tu, this guy, had actually changed. He even congratulated him. Congratulations, benefactor Xu Yang, for reaching the Daoyuan realm. He put his hands together and had a kind look. Xu Yang was left speechless. The great abyssal calamity was still ongoing. Heiyu's Dao path had already reached the 1,000-mile mark, and she had subdued more than 20 Daoyuan realm abyssal beings. Demon Buddha had also converted several Daoyuan realm abyssal beings. Ding Yu and the others also now had Dao paths that exceeded 1,000 miles long. They left the other cultivators in the dust. The 9 zones entered a period of explosive strength. Daoyuan realm cultivators appeared one after another. Hong Yuanchu had also broken through to the 10,000-mile mark not long ago. The first extreme Daoyuan realm. Chu Zan was lying on the chair, leisurely drinking the tea Su Shaner had made for him. He was teaching Chu Yun about the Daoyuan realm, as she too was ready to break through to the Daoyuan realm. The heavenly Dao laws had already devoured 90% of the great Dao of the 9 zones, but the rate of progress had slowed down, as it was now touching upon the core laws of the great Dao. The new world had given birth to a new batch of innate lifeforms. The humans in the new world were studying the golden steel and had comprehended the cultivation technique contained within it. However, they were naturally weaker than other powerful races. Even if they had comprehended a cultivation technique, they were still a fair distance from being considered a strong race, much less an overlord race. However, they were good at hiding and keeping a low profile, quietly developing. They would sit and watch the other powerful races fight. Chu Zan sighed. Their intelligence and comprehension far exceeded other races. The only weakness was that they were naturally weak. However, they had great potential for growth. Chu Zan did not interfere with the situation in the new world and just silently watched. In the chaos, a beam of light descended upon the 9 zones. Boom! The light dispersed and entered the heavenly Dao laws, disappearing without a trace. This was not the first time. Since last year, the experts of the various races in the chaos would use the Great Formation from time to time, trying to open a gap in the Great Dao's power of rejection so that they could enter the 9 zones. However, they failed every time. The pleasant surprise was that the formation did not collapse due to the failures. This gave all of the races hope. It was precisely because of this that the formation would be used every few days. We should be close to success, Venerable, he said excitedly. The other experts were all very excited. This time, when the formation's power entered the 9 zones, the power of rejection had clearly weakened. Furthermore, the power of the formation had been absorbed by the great Dao of the 9 zones. What did this mean? It meant that the great Dao had begun to accept the power of the formation. As time passed, they would definitely be able to enter the 9 zones with the help of the great formation. Seeing hope, they became more and more enthusiastic. In order to speed up the formation's recharging process, they even sent experts to find various treasures, believing that it would all be worth it. Chu Zan was amused by this group of people, but he also felt somewhat guilty for teasing these people and getting their hopes up. However, the foundations of these various races were truly very deep. How many treasures had they contributed to increase the power of the Great Formation? The heavenly Dao laws had absorbed quite a bit of the formation's power, and each time they used it, it nourished the heavenly Dao laws even more. Seeing their hopeful smiles, he could not bear to dash their dreams. After all, this great formation was the culmination of their blood, sweat and tears. Furthermore, the various races had united and cooperated, which was almost unheard of. Chu Zan sighed. I'm really too kind. For the sake of the continued unity and friendship of the various races. He could only continue to give them hope. Chu Zan would not admit that he was deceiving them. He looked at the various races as they began to use treasures to recharge the Great Formation. These races truly had deep pockets, accumulated over the many eras that had passed. It looked like the heavenly Dao laws were going to have a good meal again. Since these races had contributed to the growth of the heavenly Dao laws, Chu Zan decided that after the heavenly Dao laws completely devoured the great Dao, he would let some of them in. That being said, he would only let the ones who were not strong enough to rock the boat in. The Dao realm would be the upper limit for now. The return of the various races to the 9 zones would also increase the diversity of the world and contribute to their growth. As for the 9 extreme Daoyuan realm experts, severing the source of their Dao paths, reaching the freedom Daoyuan realm, this would not be allowed for the time being. In the chaos, the various races continued to infuse the Great Formation with treasures. All of them were extremely excited. The changes in the 9 zones told them that great opportunities and fortunes were waiting for them. In front of the chaos abyss, Wu Zhong appeared once again, staring intently at the entrance but ultimately not entering. There were many powerful creatures in the chaos abyss. With his current strength, he was definitely capable of fighting them. However, this was not the case when it came to the creator of this chaos abyss, Prison Dao Ancient God. Suddenly, Wu Zhong discovered that his Dao path was showing signs of resonance. He was stunned. His martial intent fluctuated. What was this? Master was recovering. Wu Zhong was overjoyed. Immediately, he sent his wisp of consciousness deep into the chaos abyss, following the martial intent fluctuation. He concealed his wisp of consciousness as best he could to try not to attract the attention of the powerful creatures in the chaos abyss. At a certain moment, his wisp of consciousness came into contact with something, which seemed to become entangled with his wisp of consciousness. Wu Zhong immediately understood and instantly retracted his wisp of consciousness. When it returned, a ring-shaped object manifested itself. Shua. Wu Zhong reached out to catch it. It was as black as ink, and there was martial intent circulating around it. There were faint patterns on it as well. The moment he received the ring, Wu Zhong received a revelation from it, which was to send it into the 9 zones, so that it would have a chance to recover. In the past, it would not have been difficult to send the ring into the 9 zones. However, the power of rejection was now present, and Wu Zhong could not guarantee that the ring would be able to pass through it. The ring was condensed from the remnants of Wu's martial intent and contained the foundation of his Dao path. It was the key to his recovery. After entering the 9 zones, he could use the nourishment of the great Dao of the 9 zones to slowly recover. Then, suddenly, Wu Zhong's expression changed, and he quickly fled. Shua. A streak of light shot over from the distance. If you get any closer to the abyss, prepare to die. A cold voice echoed from afar. Wu Zhong fled in a panic. A supreme expert. In the distance, 2 figures were heading toward the chaos abyss. Prison Dao Ancient God's pawns. It was 9th and 11th, who were here to investigate the death of 17th. Originally, it was 7th and 9th who were tasked to investigate this matter, but 7th was then given another temporary mission, so 11th, who was nearby, joined in instead. After forcing Wu Zhong to flee, the 2 of them continued forward. Were it not for the fact that they were still rather far away from the chaos abyss, they would not have allowed him to leave unscathed. They traveled through the chaos rapidly, and after some time, they reached the chaos abyss. Suddenly, 11th looked in the direction of the ancient chaos world. Is that where the ancient chaos world is? It seems that there are some treasures over there. Why don't we go around and investigate if 17th's death is related to the ancient chaos world? We can teach them the might of our prison god palace as well. 9th nodded. They were both world creator realm experts whose Dao paths had exceeded the million-mile mark. Furthermore, with prison Dao Ancient God as their backing, there was no need to take the ancient chaos world seriously. In any case, the ancient chaos world was not considered a supreme power in the chaos. Rather, there were some experts that came from the ancient chaos world, which made it rather famous. The 2 pawns headed toward the ancient chaos world. At this moment, the various races in the ancient chaos world were blissfully unaware of these 2 experts, and were simply doing their best to try and recharge the great formation as soon as possible. Chu Zan was observing the Lord of Chaos, which was now in the form of an egg condensed by the power of calamity. A cracking sound could be heard, and it seemed like it would hatch at any time. The place where the power of calamity was located was the core of the Great Tao, and was also one of the few locations that the heavenly Tao laws had yet to take control of. The birth of the Lord of Chaos was bound to cause some changes. The power of rejection existed because of the Lord of Chaos, so it was likely that it would gradually weaken and eventually disappear after its birth. However, it was the heavenly Tao laws that were in control now, so Chu Zan could maintain the power of rejection. Suddenly, Chu Zan raised his head and looked into the chaos. The 2 world creator realm experts from the prison god palace were approaching quickly. Their target was the great formation of the various races. The immortals, celestials, demons, dragons, phoenixes, and the other races of the chaos all had world creator realm experts. However, they were all relatively weak in comparison to these 2. One had a 5 million mile long Dao path, while the other had a 4 million mile long Dao path. Such strength was sufficient to sweep across the current ancient chaos world. Furthermore, it was obvious that these 2 were not heading to the ancient chaos world with good intentions. The formation that the various races had set up together had consumed many treasures. It was extremely important to the various races. Furthermore, Chuzan still wanted to continue to fleece them and use the Great Formation to nourish the heavenly Tao laws. How could he allow others to interfere? Should he directly attack and kill them? However, attacking openly would expose the fact that there was a hidden expert in this region of the chaos, and potentially in the 9 zones. This did not fit in with Chuzan's agenda. If such news was spread, all sorts of experts would flock to the 9 zones, and it would be easy for the situation to go out of control. He could not take action personally. Chuzan looked at Tai. Tai had been hiding for so long. It was time for him to show himself. In any case, if Tai was insufficient as a deterring force, Chuzan was confident that the immortal, celestial and demon races had strong enough ancestors to deal with such threats. Chuzan took out the Chaos Dao mirror and contacted Tai. Tai, I've already prepared the treasure. I'll give it to you later. Tai was stunned. Was this person really going to give him a treasure to heal his injuries? One had to know that his injuries were not ordinary, and ordinary treasures were completely ineffective. Otherwise, he would not have had to hibernate for such a long time to recover. Really, naturally, you don't have to worry about it. Just wait to receive it, Chuzan said with certainty. Then, I'll have to thank Brother Taoist. Tai chuckled. Calling Chuzan by that other title of his was ridiculous, so he would have to settle for Brother Taoist. You're too polite. It's just a small treasure, Chuzan said with a smile. A pearl appeared in his hand, and a ball of chaotic energy of creation was infused into it. It also contained a fist attack, which would be enough to kill those 2. When it was activated, people would definitely think that Tai had made a move. The giant race was also involved in the Great Formation. However, they were not one of the main contributors and did not put in much effort. Even so, Tai had enough reason to attack when an enemy came to snatch the treasures used to recharge and form the formation. Chuzan did not want the Great Formation to be destroyed, and neither did the various races. Furthermore, it was not just the giant race. The immortal, celestial, demon and other powerful races would not sit by and do nothing. When they joined hands, it was likely that they would inform their own backers and ancestors to safeguard the Great Formation. Chuzan also observed the 2 experts while talking to Tai. I'm afraid that the power of the treasure is a little strong. You have to take care not to damage it, or its power might be too much for you to bear. It's fine, I'm not weak. I'll definitely be able to stabilize it. Tai was not bothered by this. Even though he was injured, he was still extremely powerful. It's good that you are confident. After all, you're really too far away, so I can't help to control the power of this treasure. Chuzan was mentally priming Tai for what would soon transpire. The treasure would go out of control and kill someone, 2 people specifically. He did not want Tai to think that it was Chuzan's fault or scheme. It would be an accident. I'll say this in advance, if you damage it, don't come looking for me for compensation. Brother Taoist must be joking. Do I look like such a person? Of course, he did not completely believe Chuzan's words. He still had to take the necessary precautions. What if the other party was passing on a treasure to him in name? What if it was actually something that would harm him? Although Tai was naturally unafraid, and confident in his own strength, he was still injured. However, he could still temporarily unleash his peak strength in times of crisis, so he felt that he would be able to deal with any unexpected situations. Chuzan laughed in his heart. Gifts naturally had to be paid for. In the chaos, 9th and 11th were approaching the ancient chaos world when they discovered the Great Formation. Something that contained so many supreme treasures naturally attracted their attention. Even the prison god palace did not have so many treasures. That formation was extraordinary. Moreover, it seemed to be set up for the 9 zones. The 2 of them did not care much about the 9 zones. After all, at their level of strength, they did not think that there were any treasures they needed in the 9 zones. Moreover, they were solitary experts and not affiliated to their races, so they did not need to consider strengthening their respective races. The 2 of them set their eyes on the Great Formation right away. They had to have it. They were pleasantly surprised that this formation was not a killing formation and could not target them. They immediately charged toward the formation. As for offending the various races of the ancient chaos world, they did not care. If worst came to worst, they could just hide in the prison god palace and wait for prison Dao ancient god to resolve the matter. The prison god palace will be taking this formation. Get lost. An overbearing voice rang out. Venerable, he suddenly felt a strong sense of danger. His expression changed. His figure flickered and he immediately escaped. How many years had it been since he had felt such a strong sense of danger? His acute senses toward danger were the reason why he had survived to this day. He had even used his senses to avoid the great Tao calamity. Some of the celestial race experts saw him move, and immediately followed suit. The experts from the other races were stunned. What was going on? Could it be that the formation was about to explode? That did not make sense. All of their checks and experiments had concluded that it was safe to operate. At this moment, an overbearing voice was heard. Two figures approached each other quickly and approached the formation. Mo Zun was furious. Impudent. Boom. His Tao path appeared, and he threw a punch. In the distance, when Venerable he saw this, he could not help but take a deep breath. This demon brat was seeking his own death. No wonder he sensed that Mo Zun did not have long to live. He was going to be killed. Both Divine Lord Du and Kun Zhen's expressions changed. The two of them were not as reckless and overbearing as Mo Zun. Boom. 11th's eyes were cold. How dare you attack a subordinate of the prison Tao ancient god? You must die. Shua. A cold light flashed. Mo Zun's Tao path crumbled, and his physical body began to disintegrate. I'm Mo Zun of the demon race. You dare to kill me? Mo Zun was shocked and furious. HMPH. 11th snorted coldly and showed no mercy. Mo Zun was dead. All of the experts present turned pale with fear. One of the strongest cultivators among the Freedom Daoyuan realm experts had been killed just like that. This unknown person had to be a world creator realm expert. Moreover, he was a subordinate of Prison Tao ancient god. Their expressions changed. Their target was the Great Formation, which was the blood, sweat, and tears of every race. It was also at this moment, in the ancient chaos world, several powerful auras flared up. The Immortal, Celestial, and Demon race experts, the three World Creator realm experts, had all appeared. The eyes of the Demon race World Creator realm expert were extremely cold. A subordinate of Prison Tao ancient god. Very well, Prison God Palace, you will pay the price for killing a member of the Demon race. I'd like to see how the Prison Tao ancient god compares to my ancestor. Prison Tao ancient god reigns supreme, 11th said proudly, your ancestor is a piece of trash in comparison. You two want to offend our races. This formation now belongs to the Prison God Palace. If you're not happy, then fight us, 9th said coldly. The Prison God Palace was as overbearing as ever. They did not even care about powerful races like Immortal, Celestial and Demon races. Normally, this would be where others would back down. After all, the Prison God Palace and Prison Tao ancient god were infamous in the chaos for not having a bottom line and would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. However, the formation was the blood, sweat, and tears of every race. They had sacrificed too much. Moreover, the 9 zones contained a great fortune. How could they give up? A fight was inevitable. Boom. Various Tao paths emerged, and the World Creator realm experts from the Immortals, Celestials, Demons, Dragons, Phoenixes and races of the ancient Chaos world, a total of 9 experts, surrounded 9th and 11th. However, the difference in strength between the two sides was too great. After a short exchange of blows, blood was instantly shed by those 7 World Creator experts. They kept retreating. Do the two of you have to offend all of the races in the ancient Chaos world? Do you think we have no other experts? These 2 experts were too powerful, so how could they resist them? They had no choice but to rely on their backers in order to scare off the other party. However, there was no way the overbearing Prison God Palace would be intimidated by such threats. As such, 9th and 11th did not show any signs of retreating. With Prison Tao ancient god as their backer, what was there to fear? It was just a formation. It was not as if they exterminated these races. That was something that they would never dare to do. After all, that was an irrevocable enmity, and the ancestors of the Immortal, Celestial and Demon races were not much weaker than Prison Tao ancient god individually. If the 3 ancestors worked together, even Prison Tao ancient god would be suppressed. But that was that and this was this. It was just a formation anyway. Boom. The battle was getting more and more intense. Get out of the way, or I'll kill you without mercy. 9th said coldly. The experts of the various races were extremely sullen, but they did not want to retreat. Instead, they began to use some of their trump cards in an attempt to stall for time. 591 One Punch. Chu Zan looked at the battle in the chaos. Those 2 were subordinates of Prison Tao ancient god. Somehow, they seemed to be very proud to call themselves pawns. It was rather strange. Were they here to investigate the chaos abyss or the 9 zones? Exclamation mark. In any case, since they were prison Tao ancient god subordinates, they had to die. The experts of the various races could not hold on any longer and were already frantically retreating, and they were on the verge of making a run for it. The two prison god palace experts were about to go in for the kill. The time to strike was coming. Chuzan sent the pearl containing the chaotic energy of creation and his hidden fist attack through the chaos Tao mirror. Tai, I'm sending you the treasure now. Please be careful with it. Tai's spirits were lifted. His entire body was tensed up as he condensed his aura, ready to erupt with his peak strength at any time. Send it. I can control it. Chuzan laughed inwardly. When Tai learned that he had killed those two prison god palace subordinates and offended prison Tao ancient god, he would probably not be laughing. Chuzan did not know if the giant race could withstand the pressure, but he believed that the other races would also bear the brunt of prison Tao ancient god's fury. That being said, Tai would probably still be the primary target. Boom! The power of 11th Tao path lashed out like whips, bombarding the bodies of the experts. The immortal race expert was sent flying. The body of the celestial race expert was dripping with blood. The demon race expert spat out a mouthful of blood. The scales of the dragon expert fell off. The feathers of the phoenix expert fell off. The body of the expert from the chaos race was starting to crumble. Naturally, there was an expert from the giant race among them. However, he was just putting on an act and was not using his full strength. However, he still suffered a heavy blow, and cracks appeared all over his body. The Tao path of the giant race was built on their physical bodies, and did not need to create a world to reach the world creator realm. Their bodies were sufficient to support the continuous growth of their Tao paths beyond the million-mile mark. Therefore, for a giant, an injury to their body was a serious one. Boom! 9th and 11th raised their hands to try and grab the great formation, which made the various races livid. The prison god palace had gone too far. Somewhere in the chaos, Hong was watching the battle from afar. He naturally would not make a move. The great formation had little to do with the human race. In fact, all of the races had excluded the human race, intentionally or otherwise. However, Mo Zun had fallen, which was something worth celebrating. It seemed that prison Tao ancient god's subordinates were truly arrogant and overbearing. They were not even afraid of the alliance between the other races. The ancient chaos gods were rumored to be the strongest existences in the chaos. The great formation was about to fall into the hands of 9th and 11th. Hong was slightly envious of this. The treasures in the formation could be used to strengthen the human race significantly. Ancient chaos world. In the giant race's territory, Tai was fully focused, accumulating energy. If this expert was truly sending him a treasure to treat his injuries, that would naturally be for the best. However, he had to be wary of the other party taking the opportunity to ambush him. The giants around the statue had already left. The great formation was now the focus of everyone in the ancient chaos world. Tai naturally sensed it as well. However, he was too lazy to care. The giant race would not suffer any major losses from losing the formation. Moreover, it was not worthwhile to offend the prison god palace over such a small matter, as it would attract the attention of that old B*****. Boom. ... There was a ripple in space. It's here. Tai's spirit was roused, and he focused himself intently. After a while, a pearl emerged from the spatial ripple. There was no attack. There was no danger. Tai was a little surprised. Did the expert really give him a treasure to heal his injuries? However, the expert had also said that the transmission distance was too great, so he would not be able to control the force of the transmission or help him control the treasure, yet. Where was the violent force? Could it be that the force of the transmission had been exhausted due to the long distance? Just as this thought came to mind, Tai sensed a terrifying, overbearing, and destructive power surge out of the transmission channel following the appearance of the pearl. As soon as this power appeared, Tai felt a sense of danger. His pores opened and his hair stood on end. Gotcha! The statue was broken and Tai's body was revealed. His aura instantly erupted. As expected, that expert was using this as an excuse to attack him. Boom! A fist attack surged out, carrying the power of destruction as it hurtled into the chaos. It was not targeted at him. Tai was stunned. He subconsciously caught the pearl that was floating in space. The transmission channel then closed. However, that destructive power had already charged into the chaos. In a daze, Tai turned to look at where the destructive power was headed. Not good. Tai was shocked. The terrifying power was charging toward the two prison god palace subordinates. At this moment, the giant race expert's body had been split open as he frantically tried to escape. He was furious. Could these two people not tell that he was just phoning it in? Why were they still attacking him so ruthlessly? The great formation was about to fall into their hands, and the experts of the various races were in despair. At this moment, from the ancient chaos world, a terrifying aura burst forth. Then, an overbearing and destructive fist attack arrived. Its target was 9th and 11th. Everyone was shocked. Which supreme expert had returned to the ancient chaos world? We are prison Dao ancient gods subordinates. How dare! The two pawns instantly went all out and used all of their trump cards. They also tried to use prison Dao ancient god's name to get the other party to back off. However, this fist attack knew no mercy. Boom! Their Dao paths collapsed and their bodies shattered, gradually turning into nothingness. There were only two frightened and resentful voices that echoed in the chaos. Prison Dao ancient god will definitely take revenge for us. Those who kill his subordinates will die without a doubt. The space in the chaos shattered as well, turning into nothingness. It took a long time before the space began to repair itself. Not even the ashes of those two experts were left behind. In the chaos, the illusory phenomenon of a world's birth to destruction appeared, signifying the fall of the two world creator realm experts. Silence. The experts from the various races were all stunned. Those powerful experts had died just like that. Since when did world creator realm experts become so fragile? The world creator realm experts of the various races all looked in the direction of the ancient chaos world. Which expert had made a move? Which person was so ballsy as to kill prison Dao ancient god's subordinates? A demon race supreme expert? That could not be. That punch was incomparably overbearing. There was not a trace of demonic power in it. It was more like the giant race. Furthermore, that punch appeared when the giant race expert was retreating after suffering a heavy blow. The aura in the ancient chaos world also belonged to the giant race. Which expert of the giant race had returned? Did the giant race really have the confidence to deal with prison Dao ancient god's revenge? Or were they confident that the various races would share that burden? The giant race expert was dumbfounded. Then, he became fanatical. The ancestor of my race is truly ferocious. He killed those two with a single punch. The great formation was preserved and the crisis was over. However, the death of two prison god palace experts was not a small matter. Revenge was inevitable. The supreme experts of the various races had to return. The 9 zones contained great fortune. Without a supreme expert, how could they fight for more opportunities? In the ancient chaos world, Tai was dumbfounded. His forehead was covered in cold sweat. He would not be able to hand prison Dao ancient god's revenge. I might have been tricked. That was Tai's first thought. However, when he saw the pearl in his hand, he was shocked. The chaotic energy of creation. It was a true treasure. It would definitely help him recover from his injuries. There was definitely no way someone who gave him such a precious treasure would trick him. It seemed that Brother Taoist was truly a sincere person. Tai sighed inwardly. Forget it. In a sense, those two did indeed die because of me. Chu Zan's voice came at the right time. Tai, did you get the treasure? It's the first time I've transferred a treasure over such a long distance and I couldn't control my strength well. Was the treasure damaged? It seemed that Brother Taoist was worried that the treasure would be destroyed. Tai felt ashamed. He should not have misjudged Brother Taoist. Thank you for your treasure, Brother Taoist. Only a little bit of power leaked out and crushed 2 small bugs. It's not worth mentioning, Tai said gratefully. It appeared that everything had gone according to plan. You remained in seclusion, but came up with a brilliant idea to fulfill your objectives from behind the scenes, killing 2 pawns of prison Dao ancient god with a single punch. This resolved the crisis of the various races. You have been rewarded with the chaos shaking technique. He had triggered the system reward. Chaos shaking technique. Chu Zan's interest was piqued and he examined the reward. A chaos supreme technique that contains vast power and inspires worship. This was something that matched his might great Dao principle perfectly. When it was cultivated to mastery, its power would spread throughout the chaos and all living beings in the chaos would tremble in fear. It truly had the power to shake the chaos. Chu Zan did not receive the reward immediately. After all, he needed some time to comprehend a chaos supreme technique. He sent a message to Tai to show his concern and to avoid the arousal of suspicion. When he examined the pearl of the laws of retribution, Tai's dot was now blue. Even the way Tai addressed him had become more polite and respectful. It seemed that Tai was an honest man. Chu Zan was very pleased, and felt that he had helped the right person. In any case, the chaotic energy of creation was a supreme treasure, even though the 3,000 chaos bodies of creation were constantly producing it. Finding it in the chaos depended on luck and opportunity. It could only be encountered but not sought. It was extremely rare. As such, the trade-off could be considered worthwhile. Only 2 little bugs. That's good. Chuzan heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, it didn't cause too much damage. Otherwise, I'd feel bad, he said, faking a sense of relief. All this made Tai feel more guilty for doubting Chuzan. Brother Taoist, there's no need to be like this. Even if you caused some damage, it was because you were trying to help me. I should be the one to bear for such things, Tai said solemnly. I want to thank Brother Taoist for this treasure. It will really help speed up my recovery process significantly, Tai said gratefully. It's just a small treasure, there's no need to be so reserved about it. Chuzan's tone was relaxed, as if he did not care much about the chaotic energy of creation. After chatting with Tai for a while, Chuzan deactivated the mirror, and looked over at the Great Formation. At this moment, the World Creator Realm experts of the various races had all returned to the ancient Chaos world. Venerable, he continued to fill the formation with treasures and help it recharge. Ancient Chaos world, Tai turned into a statue again and ordered the Immortal, Celestial, and Demon race experts to inform their respective Supreme Realm experts to return. He then ignored those people. He had to quickly recover from his injuries so that he could deal with Prison Dao Ancient God's revenge. Even if Prison Dao Ancient God himself did not come over to deal with him, there was still First, who was the latter's #1 subordinate. Tai was unsure as to how strong First was, but either person presented a problem for him. How should he face the possible crisis? Tai sighed. He had to look for solutions. That sinister and cunning Chu should have a solution, right? Moreover, he had to inform his ancestor. If the old ancestor was willing to step in, everything would be fine. While he was mulling over this, he absorbed the chaotic energy of creation into his body to heal his internal injuries. At the same time, he took out a special ancient jade talisman. On it, there was a pattern that seemed to be condensed from the laws. After hesitating for a moment, he finally activated it. Chu, I killed some experts from the Prison God Palace. Is there a way to avoid disaster? After a long while, he received a message from the jade talisman. Why did you kill them? Chu was surprised. This was not Tai's style. For the sake of a treasure. Tai was a little conflicted. He did not know if he should tell Chu what had happened in detail. What kind of treasure was worth you killing them? If you don't tell me the reason, then how am I supposed to help you? Chu looked helpless. The blockhead had not contacted him for a long time, but was now looking for him for advice. Tai pondered for a moment and decided to briefly explain what had happened. Somewhere in the distant chaos, an elegant man was hovering in space. He looked at the message transmitted through the jade talisman. His first thought was, Tai had been tricked. You shouldn't have taken this responsibility. Tai, you've been tricked. Chu had a helpless look on his face. This big fool had been tricked by him many times, so why did he not learn from the past? Chu had tricked him, but he had only treated him as a hatchet man and had no intention of harming him. Others were different. Nonsense. Tai was furious. Brother Taoist is a sincere man with a noble character. How could he be as cunning and shameless as you? Chu, you're shameless, but don't think that others are as shameless as you. Chu did not feel good. This blockhead was really silly. This was clearly a trap, yet this blockhead had fallen for it hook, line and sinker. Besides, Chu suspected that this brother Taoist was actually nearby. Tai, you have to believe me. I'm good at scamming people, so I'm familiar with these tricks. BLL shit. You are you, cunning and shameless. How can you be compared to brother Taoist? Tai continued to rage. Do you know what treasure brother Taoist gave me? Chu, would you use such a treasure to plot against someone just to kill 2 subordinates of Prison Dao Ancient God? Your heart is getting darker and darker. It's fine if you're black-hearted, but don't paint everyone with the same brush. I'll tell you now that brother Taoist is truly a noble and sincere person. It's rare to come across such a person in the chaos. Chu was dumbfounded by this. Why did this scene feel so familiar? Thinking back, he had also tricked Tai in the past. Back then, Tai had also scolded the people who reminded him to be careful and praised Chu for his noble character. As time went by, he had become the person who advised Tai, listening to Tai scold him and praise others for their noble character. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that Tai had been tricked. Then tell me, what treasure did he give you? Chu asked helplessly. Chaotic energy of creation, Tai said solemnly. What? Chu was stunned and found it hard to believe. That's right, Brother Taoist gave me the chaotic energy of creation. Hiss. Chu took a deep breath. His belief that Tai had been tricked began to waver. Was it worthwhile killing 2 prison Tao Palace experts for the chaotic energy of creation? Yes, it was. Even prison Tao ancient god would kill his own subordinates if it meant that he would receive the chaotic energy of creation. How is it? Isn't Brother Taoist noble and sincere? I told you, he's not trying to trick me. Tai was very proud. Chu, you're really black-hearted. You think everyone is as cunning and sinister as you. Maybe I've misunderstood. Chu Yu still found it hard to believe. Was there really such a good person in the chaos? Why had he never met one? His intuition told him that things were not as simple as they seemed. Quickly think of a way for me to deal with this matter, Tai urged him. The immortal race has a supreme treasure hidden in the ancient chaos world, Chu said after a moment of silence. He then told Tai where one of the immortal race's supreme treasures was hidden. Place this supreme treasure in the formation, he continued, then make it clear that the 2 experts were after the supreme treasure, and that you protected it. Tai listened quietly. Chu's method was very simple. The formation was simply a cover. Their true target had been that supreme treasure. Tai had attacked in order to protect the supreme treasure, and so the immortal race owed him a favor. Would the immortal race be willing to share the burden? Under normal circumstances, no one was willing to offend prison Tao ancient god. However, this supreme treasure was extremely important. It was one of the legendary treasures left behind by their ancestor. The immortal race had hidden it in the ancient chaos world. Ordinary people did not know of its existence, and even some of the second-generation ancestors did not know. When they were setting up the formation, it was accidentally found and placed in the formation. This was very reasonable. How did Tai know? He was one of the 18 ancestors of the giant race. He had seen the supreme treasure before, so he knew that this was not a rare thing. In order to ensure that the immortals were willing to bear the brunt of the revenge with him, Tai would take care of this supreme treasure for them. After all, he was the one who protected it. It was perfectly reasonable for him to hold it for a while, and then return it to them after the matter was settled. Chu, you're as cunning as ever, Tai sighed. Chu's face darkened. Tai, in order to help you, I've given you a trump card. How did you even know where the supreme treasure was? Tai asked curiously. Heaven's secrets cannot be revealed, Chu replied in an enigmatic manner. Will they really be willing to offend prison Tao ancient god for that supreme treasure? Tai asked after a moment of silence. They won't take this matter lightly since it's related to their ancestor. Besides, prison Tao ancient god might not act if the immortal race ancestor is involved, Chu said in a grave tone. What? Tai was stunned. The immortal race ancestor is comparable to prison Tao ancient god. Chu seemed to know more secrets about the chaos than he did. He sighed inwardly. It had been a long time since they had contacted each other, so they naturally had drifted apart. How could the 3 ancestors of the immortal, celestial, and demon races be weaker than ancient chaos gods? There was a reason why those 3 races dominated the 9 zones, Chu said in a low voice. Tai thought to himself that if the ancestors of the 3 races were not weaker than ancient chaos gods, they would not fear prison Tao ancient god. I understand. I'll go and prepare now, Tai said excitedly. Before the conversation ended, Tai could not help but ask, Chu, how strong are you now? From his impression, Chu was not known for his battle prowess, but for his schemes. I've improved a little. I'm slightly stronger than you were back then, he said with a smile. When Tai heard that, he could not help but say, strength is the most important thing. Schemes are just small tricks. Don't be engrossed in scheming and neglect your own strength. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Chu smiled. Then, he ended his conversation with Tai. A smile appeared on Chu's face. I'm the first ancestor of the human race, and have fought and killed countless enemies. How could I not know that strength is the most important thing? Chu was in a world that was left behind by an ancient expert after he died. At the core of the world, there was a mass of chaotic energy of creation. Once he obtained it, he would be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with an ancient chaos god, albeit only the weaker ones. Then, it would be time for him to return to the 9 zones to take a look at the situation personally. Tai, what do you know of my plans? What do you know of my strength? Chu's figure slowly walked into the core of the world and merged into the ball of chaotic energy of creation. The opportunity to have a 10 million mile Tao path was right in front of him. In the ancient chaos world, Tai left the giant race's territory quietly. He then sneaked into a certain place in the immortal race's territory. He took the Jade Ruler from a certain palace on a mountain peak. The Jade Ruler was very ordinary, and it did not seem to contain any power of presence other than a tiny bit of immortal energy, which exuded a carefree, free, and ethereal feeling. It seemed to be an ordinary item. Tai was confused. Was this really one of the immortal race's ancestors' treasures? Why would the immortal race place such an important treasure in some random palace? However, he believed that Chu would not lie to him. Jade rulers were one of the most common artifacts among the immortal race, and there were large numbers of them used to create the formation. Thus, it was entirely plausible that a supreme treasure had been placed inside the formation by accident. Tai wanted to secretly place this Jade Ruler in the formation and take it out in public. It was not that difficult. After all, he was currently the strongest expert in the ancient chaos world. Moreover, the giant race had also participated in the setup of the Great Formation. Occasionally, they would need to fill up the array with treasures. In order to prevent any accidents from happening, Tai secretly placed the Jade Ruler into the formation as soon as he got it. Venerable he and the others watching over the formation were not World Creator Realm experts, so they naturally failed to detect him. After putting the Jade Ruler in, Tai immediately left seclusion. His injuries were rapidly recovering under the nourishment of the chaotic energy of creation. Furthermore, he had gained new insights thanks to the unique property of the chaotic energy of creation. After fully recovering from his injuries, his strength would improve further. Tai suddenly descended upon the formation. That huge body and terrifying physical body gave off an extremely oppressive feeling. "Senior Tai, what are you here for?" Venerable he asked nervously. Could it be that Tai was tempted by the formation? Tai had been able to kill those two prison god palace experts with a single punch. If he really wanted to take the formation, no one present could stop him. Tai glanced at him. So it was Venerable he, that piece of trash. He was the most useless one among the second-generation ancestors of the immortal race. However, he was definitely capable in certain aspects given the fact that he had managed to survive until today. Tai would not totally despise him. If Venerable he lived long enough, he would eventually become strong. Hey, your immortal race really doesn't treasure the things left behind by your ancestor, Venerable he was stunned. What was going on? Any item left behind by the ancestor of the immortal race would be treated as their most precious treasure. How could they not care? The ancestor of the immortal race had disappeared for countless years. Even he, a second-generation ancestor of the immortal race, had no idea where the ancestor had gone. Perhaps only those from the first generation and those who had inherited the ancestor's legacy would know. Senior Tai, what do you mean by that? Such a thing would be regarded as the most precious treasure of the immortal race. There's no way we would disregard something like that. Venerable he frowned. Tai would not speak about this matter for no reason. Was his sudden appearance due to this matter? Tai should know what such a treasure meant to the immortal race. They would never allow it to be left in the hands of someone else unless it was personally bestowed by the ancestor himself. Oh, Tai laughed. Raising his hand, Tai made a grabbing motion toward the Great Formation. The faces of the experts from the various races changed. Tai had his eyes on the formation. The giant expert was also embarrassed. What was the ancestor doing? Tai took out a Jade Ruler from the formation. It looked very ordinary, and something very common among the immortal race. Venerable he's expression changed, going by what Tai had said earlier. His face revealed a look of disbelief. Could it be that this item belonged to the ancestor? It was actually placed into the formation. In that case, the target of those two prison god palace experts was not the formation itself, but this item. Tai held the Jade Ruler in his hand. Immortal energy swirled around it, and it exuded a faint, carefree, and ethereal feeling. Your immortal race owes me a favor. Ask your seniors to come and claim it from me. After Tai finished speaking, he disappeared. Venerable he opened his mouth, but eventually closed it. He was greatly shocked. It really was the ancestor's item. Tai would not lie. This was not a small matter. Since it involved the ancestor's item, and the prison god palace experts wanted to take it, did it mean that prison Dao ancient god was behind it? Could it be that the other party wanted to use the item to scheme against the ancestor? Venerable he knew that this matter was not something he could interfere with. He was only a second-generation ancestor of the immortals, and the weakest among them to boot. The other races were all surprised, and looked at Venerable he with strange expressions. A second-generation ancestor did not even recognize his ancestor's treasure and used it to set up for great formation. Truly worthless, Tai returned to the giant race's territory and turned into a statue again. He played around with the jade ruler for a while before putting it away. He would wait for the arrival of the powerful experts of the immortal race. They would be the ones to handle the matter regarding the prison god palace. He sighed inwardly. Chu was as cunning and black-hearted as ever. He had calculated everything. Sadly, it was just that he was too weak. After looking down on Chu's strength, Tai entered a state of comprehension and began to comprehend the insights provided to him by the chaotic energy of creation. A palace was floating in the chaos, and more experts gathered there. 9th and 11th have fallen. This is akin to challenging the prison god palace. The Supreme Lord is already furious. This matter must be thoroughly investigated. All of the pawns were furious. If they did not take revenge on the murderer, the prestige and dominance that the prison god palace had built up would be gone. Prison god palace, the illusory figure said, head straight to the ancient chaos world. The prison god palace began to move toward the region of the chaos where the ancient chaos world was located. In the special realm, prison Dao ancient god opened his eyes, his spiritual power faintly leaking out. His face was filled with anger. How dare you kill my pawns? You must die. Yet more pawns had died. This was a slap to his face and a challenge to his dignity. In the distant past, someone had killed his pawns. He personally took action to annihilate and suppress the murderer and his race. Since then, his pawns rampaged through the chaos, and no one dared to kill them. Even the subordinates of the other ancient chaos gods only injured his pawns and did not dare to kill them. Prison Dao ancient god recalled that several 100 million years ago, a pawn had been killed. Back then, he had not made a move personally. Perhaps because of this, the chaos had already forgotten about his existence and might, and dared to challenge his dignity by killing his pawns. His eyes were cold as he looked at a certain place in the chaos. That was where the first world was born from chaos. Prison Dao ancient god stood up, and the vast realm began to shrink and finally transformed into a Dao path that wrapped around his massive body. He strode toward the 9 zones. He wanted to take action personally. He would once again stun the chaos and establish his dominance. Somewhere in the chaos, a young man with a sword on his back, long hair, and a free and easy temperament, suddenly took out a jade talisman. A message had arrived. He frowned slightly. He raised his hand and calculated, as if he was trying to predict fate. After a long while, he turned around, ready to return to the 9 zones. Suddenly, a strange phenomenon appeared in front of him. In the image, there was a middle-aged man with large sleeves, free and at ease, exuding an ethereal aura. The man gave people a feeling of freedom and carefreeness. "Greetings, Master," the young man hurriedly bowed. "I'm on my way to the 9 zones. I'm afraid this matter will involve me, so I'll give you this." A golden rope was passed over. "Meow, if he insists on targeting the immortal race, use this to bind him," the middle-aged man continued. "Yes, Master, you should let go of the matters of the human race. Meow, don't be so stubborn. You've been so stubborn for far too long. Your senior brothers and sisters have all broken through, but you haven't. Don't disappoint me." The middle-aged man's voice grew stern. "The chaos is about to change. You should let go of your obsession." "Master, where is he?" Meow suddenly asked after a long silence. "I don't know. I can't tell." "Master, where is Qin?" Meow continued to ask. "Why are you so persistent? Qin is not him." "Impossible. If not for him, how could Qin have created that?" "That person followed Chong." Meow was silent for a long time, until the strange phenomenon was about to disappear, before he spoke again. "Master, I'll let the human race go." When the phenomenon disappeared, Meow looked in the direction of the 9 zones. It was time to go back. He was once the direct disciple of the immortal ancestor, but no one would remember him. Meow's figure then disappeared. Qin stood on a chaos mountain and looked in the direction of the 9 zones. Who could be so fierce as to kill the subordinates of prison Dao ancient god? Were they mad? The time was almost here. It was time to return to the 9 zones. In the 9 zones, Chuzan finally awoke from his cultivation. Another milestone reward had arrived. After receiving the reward, he looked at the reincarnation cycle. Qi had already reached the Daoyuan realm, and was the 3rd Daoyuan realm cultivator within the reincarnation cycle after Hun Yuanji. Qi sat cross-legged in front of the reincarnation cycle, still comprehending its mysteries. Only after reaching the Daoyuan realm did he truly start to gain insights into the mysteries of reincarnation. Suddenly, a voice rang out within his divine soul. Even he, a Daoyuan realm expert, could not sense where the voice had come from. The voice ignored all of his mental defenses and spoke directly to his soul. Qi was shocked. Since you have already reached the Daoyuan realm with the reincarnation cycle, I shall bestow upon you the title of Reincarnation King to maintain the order of the reincarnation cycle. You and the Fengdu Ghost King are of the same status. Both of you are under Ji and Hun Yu, the voice said. Two terrifying figures suddenly appeared in the reincarnation cycle. One of them was obviously a human. This is your fortune. Quickly thank the Lord. Ji looked at Qi, who was a former human king, and said. He had high hopes for this human junior. Qi's heart trembled. He had just discovered a shocking secret. The reincarnation cycle was created by an omnipotent expert. Many thanks, my lord, Qi hurriedly spoke. Chuzan responded, and then left it at that. As for how Qi would guard the reincarnation cycle and what his mission would be, that would naturally be arranged by Ji and Hun Yu. The reincarnation Great Tao principle had been strengthened many times by the chaotic energy of creation, and was no longer the same as before. It was truly close to perfection. Moreover, the heavenly Tao laws were about to completely devour the Great Tao. Soon, the 9 zones would be under the complete control of the heavenly Tao laws. The great abyssal calamity was getting more and more intense, and more and higher-level Daoyuan realm abyssal beings were participating in the battle. The number of new Daoyuan realm cultivators in the 9 zones was about to experience an explosive growth. Qin Ying and Ren Cheng were both about to reach the Daoyuan realm, as was Feng Kong. Chuzan looked into the chaos. The great formation of the various races were still in operation. The current formation was much more powerful than it was at the beginning. The power it could provide to the heavenly Tao laws had also increased. Chuzan was unsure if the previous incident would result in the arrival of Prison Tao Ancient God. Huang Long and the other 2 creatures of the Great Tao were about to complete their transformation. After becoming a creature of the heavenly Tao, they would be free. Chuzan would not restrict their movements. The power of calamity had condensed even further, and more cracks had appeared on the shell of the egg-like structure. The Lord of Chaos was about to be born. The world was about to welcome another great change. It was time for him to work hard to improve his strength. He would strive to achieve the Chaos Supreme Realm as soon as possible. Only then would he be truly confident in defending all he had worked for. Chuzan once again entered cultivation. The 3,000 chaos bodies of creation continuously circulated. New Tao principles were formed and fused constantly, strengthening his Tao path. Furthermore, the system's daily rewards had once again become a treasure that could help him evolve chaotic energy. Although the effect was not too great, at the very least, it aided his cultivation progress. Outside the 9 zones, in the chaos, a 9 extreme Daoyuan realm expert from the Immortal race was sitting cross-legged within the great formation. Boom! The formation shone brightly, and the power condensed from the power of the laws and Tao paths surged out from the formation and descended toward the 9 zones. This time, the power of the formation was wrapped around an Immortal race expert. All the races wanted to test if the power of rejection of the Great Tao was really weakening. Would they succeed? If it was weakened, there would be a chance to sneak into the 9 zones, which meant that the formation plan was a success and that it was all worth it. The light descended upon the 9 zones and then disappeared. It was as if it had been swallowed by the Great Tao. The Immortal race expert was not expelled immediately. Everyone was fully focused. Not being expelled did not mean that he had succeeded. What if he was directly obliterated by the Great Tao? That would be worse than rejection. Therefore, they were waiting. After a long while, a figure was sent flying as if someone had kicked him. Seeing the figure finally being expelled, the experts of the various races were not dejected. Instead, they were excited. Their eyes were filled with the light of hope. The plan was feasible. The power of rejection had weakened. It was very likely that, in time, they would be able to send people into the 9 zones. The experts of the various races then quickly scrambled off to recharge the formation with treasures. The faster they did so, the faster they would be able to weaken the power of rejection of the Great Tao, and thereby send people into the 9 zones. Seeing the united and friendly races working together, Chuzan was very pleased. He did not waste his efforts. As long as there was hope, the various races would always be united and friendly toward each other. Chuzan had done this for the sake of the unity and peace of the various races. He sighed in his heart. The next time someone comes in, I'll have them stay longer. Each time, he would add a little more time. He had to let people see hope. In the chaos, the various races were in a heated discussion about the treasures they were using to recharge the formation. Do you want to change the types of treasures? They wanted to see if using different treasures generated different results. Then, among the dragons, a white dragon that was as clear as jade appeared without warning. His eyes were staring at the other dragons in an odd way, looking very curious. It was as if he wanted to find out what was the difference between these dragons and himself. At first, the various races ignored this white dragon, as did the other dragons, thinking that it was a junior who had come to watch the proceedings. There were also white dragons among them, after all. Furthermore, most of them were female dragons. This little white dragon had come here to watch the show, so she was likely the daughter of some powerful dragon. Then, the white dragon curiously stretched out its claws and poked Long Chang's body, creating a hole in it. Long Chang screamed. This attracted the attention of the experts from the various races. Long Chang was a 9 extreme Daoyuan realm expert, yet a simple poke had created a hole in his body. The dragons were known for their strong and sturdy bodies, which were difficult to penetrate due to the toughness of their scales. Long Chang cried out miserably. By now, there were quite a few holes in his body, and he was dripping with blood. He was so frightened that he hurriedly moved away from the strange white dragon. It was too terrifying. This was the first time that Huang Long had left the Great Tao. He was very excited, and immediately went to check out the chaos. There was a show to watch here. He had also seen the great formation that the various races had set up, and the battle between them and the 2 experts from the prison god palace. Back then, he had been unable to leave the Great Tao, and had been unable to join in the fun. However, he was finally free, so he rushed out the first moment he could. He had already heard of the dragons, and believed himself to be one of them. However, he was different from ordinary dragons. He was a dragon of the Great Tao. Similar to the Azure Dragon, one of the 4 divine beasts in the world, he was born from the Great Tao. As a dragon, Huang Long was very curious. What was the difference between him and the other dragons? Thus, his curiosity brought him here. He looked at Long Chang with a face full of curiosity. The golden dragon's body was sparkling and looked very domineering. He could not help but raise his claws to poke Long Chang's body. PFF'd. 1 poke, 1 hole. Blood gushed out. Huang Long was stunned. But I didn't use any strength. Why was there a bloody hole? Did he poke an old wound? Was it because Long Chang had not recovered from his previous battle? Thus, Huang Long poked another part of Long Chang's body to verify his conjecture. PFF'd. There was another hole. So fragile. That should not be the case, right? Huang Long was dumbfounded and continued to poke. Another hole appeared. Was this dragon made of paper? Long Chang had originally been looking at the formation. His scales glowed golden, exuding the might of a dragon. Seeing Huang Long stretch out his claws to poke his body with curiosity and anticipation, Long Chang did not mind. Weak dragons were always like this. Then, he felt pain. Blood gushed out. Long Chang did not react for some time, simply staring at the wound in disbelief. That white dragon did not seem to have used much strength. How had it poked a hole in his body? Then it happened again, and another hole appeared. Long Chang was in so much pain that it was twitching. His eyes widened, and a look of fear began to surface. PFF'd. Another hole. Long Chang finally let out a blood-curdling scream as he ran away from Huang Long. It was too terrifying. He was a 9 extreme Daoyuan realm expert, so why was this happening? Was this white dragon a world creator realm expert? Why could he not recognize the other party? Furthermore, why was he still being poked? 3 holes. Was this white dragon trying to kill him? Long Chang was frightened. At this moment, the experts from all of the other races looked over. All of them had a look of surprise on their faces. Huang Long had an innocent expression on his face. I didn't use any strength. I didn't want to hurt him. Who knew he would be so weak? His body was like paper. All it took was a simple poke. The experts from the various races were speechless. However, no one interfered in this matter. After all, it was an internal matter for the dragons to deal with. Venerable, he looked at Huang Long and frowned slightly. Although Huang Long was a dragon, there was something off about his aura. It was different from the other dragons. The dragon expert in charge of the formation was the most powerful of the Freedom Daoyuan realm experts present. He did not reveal his true form, but had transformed into human form. There were tiny dragon horns on its head. At this moment, he looked at Huang Long with a puzzled expression. Something was wrong. Huang Long looked like a dragon, but did not feel like a dragon. Furthermore, he could not recognize the other party. Who are you? What's your name? Huang Long tilted his head and looked at the dragon expert. He was slightly puzzled. This person was also a dragon. Why did he look like a human? Huang Long was a creature of the great Tao, so he did not know about human form transformation. You're a dragon too. The experts from the various races were stunned. What was up with this dragon? Did it not know about human form transformation? Oh woo! Long Zheng roared and revealed his true form. He was a golden dragon that was even larger than Long Chong. Like the giant race, dragons did not have to create a world to reach the world creator realm. Instead, their Tao paths resided within their bodies. Long Zheng's aura was extremely oppressive at the moment. You don't know how to transform. He stared at Huang Long coldly. Are you really a dragon? I'm a dragon, but I'm not one of you. It's a little hard to explain. Huang Long tilted his head and stared at Long Zheng's huge body. Then, with a shake of his body, he grew in size instantly. Moreover, he leaned forward out of curiosity. This dragon was much more powerful than the last one. He looked even more majestic, so he should not be weak, right? Long Zheng just stared at him. He allowed Huang Long to approach him. Dragons were also good at close combat, and would often use their physical bodies to fight. He was very confident that Huang Long could not threaten him. No matter how he looked at it, this white dragon was not as strong as him. You're an expert among the dragons, right? Can I touch you? Huang Long raised his claws and extended a finger. Where did you come from, dragon? What's your name? Long Zheng stared at him. His aura became stronger and stronger. The scales on its body exuded a cold golden light. Feel free to touch me. I'm not made of paper. He could not help but say this when he saw how careful Huang Long was behaving. Huang Long gently poked Long Zheng's body with his finger. Having learned his lesson from poking Long Chong, Huang Long used even less force this time. These dragons were too fragile. It would not be good if he poked another bloody hole. He was not here to hurt the dragon. I'm Huang Long. He poked Long Zheng's body with his finger as he replied. PFF'd. A soft sound. Long Zheng felt pain, and his entire body subconsciously trembled. At the spot where Huang Long's finger had touched him, the scales had caved in, and there were faint traces of blood. Fortunately, there was not a hole, as Huang Long had restrained his strength, and because Long Zheng was stronger than Long Chong. At this moment, Long Zheng was not the only one shocked. The experts from the various races who were watching were all shocked. This was Long Zheng they were talking about. Although he was not a world creator realm expert, he was still a top-notch existence among the Freedom Daoyuan realm cultivators. Moreover, dragons had always been known for their strong physical bodies and unparalleled defensive capabilities. Long Zheng was especially outstanding in this regard. It was said that his dragon body had gone through all kinds of tempering and was even stronger than the average dragon. However, a light poke had actually caused his scales to cave in and blood to gush out. No matter how they looked at it, Huang Long had not used the power of his Tao path, and had clearly restrained his power. Just how strong was he? Long Zheng's figure retreated, full of vigilance. The illusionary apparition of his Tao path appeared faintly behind him as he took a defensive stance. Huang Long, he had never heard of this name. Moreover, dragons all had Long as their surname. Only their ancestors from ancient times had different names. Was Huang Long one of their ancestors? Long Zheng was bewildered. Huang Long had a look of disdain. I thought that this dragon would be a little stronger, but he was made of paper just like the last one. He could not help but think of Soaring Flood Dragon, who had the bloodline of the dragons, and was weaker than the dragons. If even the dragons were so fragile, then would Soaring Flood Dragon not be even more fragile? Are you a senior? Long Zheng was shocked. However, if he was one of the dragon ancestors, why did he not recognize him? Perhaps there were some ancient secrets that he did not know about. He only knew that apart from his own ancestor, the legendary Azure Dragon, who was one of the 4 spiritual divine beasts, was also an ancestor of the dragons. Huang Long blinked and nodded, yes, that's right. Little dragon, I'm your ancestor. Long Zheng's face was full of doubt. It did not seem right no matter how he looked at it. Why did this ancestor not even know how to transform? The experts from the other races did not think too much. Instead, their expressions turned serious. One of the old ancestors of the dragons had returned. Was it because of the great opportunity in the 9 zones? Long Zheng did not immediately acknowledge his ancestor. His intuition told him that something was not right. He sent a message to the other dragon experts to ask them to come over and confirm Huanglong's identity. Long Chong, who hid to the side, was thinking something else entirely. His eyes flickered as he felt that this was his opportunity. This was an ancestor who was extremely powerful. Moreover, he looked very easygoing. Since he had been poked with 3 bloody holes, if he complained to the ancestor, he might get some treasures. Thinking this, the bloody holes on his body cracked open a little more. More blood was flowing out. He looked miserable. Ancestor, Long Chong pays his respects to you. Long Chong flew in front of Huanglong in a flash, bowed, and gave the typical dragon salute. Long Zheng was furious at Long Chang's shamelessness. They had not even confirmed Huanglong's identity, yet he had immediately gone over to try and earn some benefits. When Huanglong saw this, he was happy. Since he was going to be the ancestor of the dragons, he might as well play the part. This dragon youngling was quite weak, like paper, but at least he was smart, so he was deserving of some assistance. Not bad, not bad. You're not bad, ancestor, I'm too weak. My physical body is too weak. I've brought shame to the dragons. Long Chong put on a pitiful expression, and even deliberately drew attention to his wounds. You're indeed a little weak. Your Dao path is a little too short. As Huanglong spoke, an item that seemed to be imbued with the laws appeared within his claws, which then flew over to Long Chang's body. The wounds healed instantly. Furthermore, Long Chong was pleasantly surprised to discover that his dragon body was actually continuously becoming stronger. At this moment, a giant dragon flew over from the ancient chaos world. He looked down at Huanglong. Your name isn't among the ancestors of the dragons. Why are you pretending to be our ancestor? Quote. Long Tuo stared coldly at Huanglong. Unlike Long Zheng and Long Chong, he was familiar with the names of the dragon ancestors. Apart from the primary ancestor, there were other dragon ancestors, but none of them were called Huanglong. However, Huanglong was undoubtedly a dragon. Therefore, he did not turn hostile at the first moment. What if he was the descendant of a certain ancestor? However, according to the tradition of the dragon clan, the descendants of the dragon ancestor would take their first names as surnames. Huanglong was unhappy. He wanted to be an ancestor. As a creature of the great Tao, his seniority and roots were comparable to the Azure Dragon, one of the 4 divine beasts of the 9 zones. If he was not the ancestor of the dragon clan, then what was he? Now, he was a creature of the heavenly Tao. Once he entered the heavenly Tao, he was no longer an ordinary dragon, and was also extremely powerful. These dragons should recognize him as their ancestor. Huanglong wanted to experience the joy of being an ancestor. Since Long Tuo dared to question him, perhaps a lesson was in order. Little dragon, how dare you offend me? You deserve to be punished. He lifted his claws, and time shifted. Before Long Tuo could react, he had become like an earthworm, his body shrinking 10,000 times. Huanglong then caught Long Tuo with his claws. The entire place turned deathly silent in shock. Long Tuo was a world creator realm expert. Even when facing prison god palaces experts, he was still able to put up a fight for some time. However, he was now completely suppressed. Venerable, he was even more shaken. Was that the power of time? That did not seem right. It seemed to be different from the power of time that he knew. Very strong. Long Tuo was dumbfounded. The moment Huanglong made his move, his soul trembled and was suppressed. Furthermore, it seemed to be a suppression that stemmed from his bloodline. Could he really be an ancestor? Long Chong felt his body becoming stronger, and seeing the existence he looked up to, Long Tuo, being suppressed, he was overjoyed. He had made the right decision. Ancestor is mighty. This kind of dragon who disrespects his ancestors should be severely punished. Long Chang's words were full of flattery and obeisance. Huanglong was overjoyed. Not bad, Long Chong, you brat, you're not bad. In the future, you can follow me around. You've been stuck at that realm for a long time. Perhaps it's time for you to progress. Huanglong was holding Long Tuo in his claws, enjoying Long Chang's flattery. He rewarded Long Chong with the ability to surpass the 9 extreme Daoyuan realm. The great Tao had almost been fully devoured by the heavenly Tao laws, and within the heavenly Tao, the restrictions of the 9 extreme Daoyuan realm did not exist. As long as the heavenly Tao laws allowed it, 9 extreme Daoyuan realm experts could continue to extend their Tao paths. Huanglong was now a creature of the heavenly Tao and wielded considerable power and authority within it. Thus, he was qualified to lift the restrictions on Long Chong. Long Chong at first took Huang Long's words as a joke. After all, the 9 extreme Daoyuan realm was limited by the Great Tao. No matter how strong the ancestor was, it was impossible to break the restriction with just some words. However, he suddenly realized that his Tao path that had been stuck for so long without any progress had suddenly moved. The bottleneck had loosened, and it seemed that he could continue to extend his Tao path. He was extremely shocked. The ancestor was too strong. Long Chong suppressed the shock in his heart. He did not break through immediately. He had to keep a low profile. He could not let the others know how powerful the old ancestor was. Otherwise, if they all fought to please the old ancestor, would that not weaken his position in the ancestor's heart? Thank you for your support, ancestor. Long Chong was extremely overjoyed. Then, he turned around and stared at Long Zheng, who was dumbfounded and in disbelief. What are you standing there for? Hurry up and pay your respects to the ancestor. Long Zheng was so angry that his dragon beard fluttered in the air. Was Long Chong trying to order him around? What, you don't like the ancestor? Long Chong berated loudly. Oh woo! Long Zheng was so angry that he let out a dragon roar, and the aura around his body surged. Long Chong was not afraid at all. He turned around and looked at Huang Long in a flattering manner. Ancestor, he's not convinced. He actually isn't paying his respects to you. This is too outrageous. He doesn't have the bearing of a dragon at all, and seems to have disregarded filial respect. He must be punished. Otherwise, such behavior will become the norm among the dragons. Huang Long felt extremely comfortable. Long Chang's flattery was very pleasing to him. Long Chong, your words make sense. Perhaps you should manage the dragon tribe here for now. Then, he raised his claws and suppressed Long Zheng. Since you have disrespected an ancestor, you must be punished, Huang Long snorted. Long Chong was overjoyed. The ancestor had acknowledged him and given him the authority over the dragon tribe. The other races were dumbfounded. Of course, there were many who looked down on Long Chong. What a B*** he was. Of course, Long Chang's performance had also opened the door to a new world for some people, who were already thinking of doing something similar when their own ancestors returned. Long Tuo was suppressed, and Long Zheng was also suppressed. This was an internal matter of the dragon tribe. The other races couldn't interfere. Moreover, even if they wanted to interfere, they were no match for Huang Long. Where is the dragon tribe's territory? Huang Long asked. As the ancestor of the dragon tribe, he naturally had to visit the dragon tribe's territory. To put it bluntly, it was his territory. He would have all of the dragons pay their respects to him. Ancestor, this way please. Long Chong immediately left with Huang Long and headed to the dragon tribe's territory in the ancient chaos world. As for the matter of the formation, how could it be more important than the ancestor's request? Upon arriving at the dragon tribe's sea, Long Chong roared, the ancestor of the dragons has returned. All dragons have come to pay their respects to their ancestor. There was an uproar. The ancestor was back. One dragon after another rose into the air. The one leading the group was a black dragon and other dragons that had reached the 9 extreme Daoyuan realm. The first thing they did was to look at Huang Long. This was the ancestor. What are you still doing? Hurry up and pay your respects to the ancestor. Do you have no manners at all? Long Chong rebuked them angrily. The leader of the dragons was so angry that he wanted to beat Long Chong to death. Was he not Long Chang's senior? Why was he being disrespected like this? What are you looking at? Long Tuo and Long Zheng have already been punished by the ancestor for disrespecting him. Do you want to follow suit? Long Chong spat as he angrily rebuked the black dragon. Hurry up and pay your respects to the ancestor. The moment the black dragon heard that Long Tuo and Long Zheng had been punished and suppressed, he was shocked. Could this dragon really be an ancestor? After all, Long Tuo was a world creator realm expert. If Long Tuo was suppressed without a fight, that meant that this ancestor was far, far stronger. It no longer mattered if he was the ancestor or not. He was definitely a supreme expert from the dragon tribe. Greetings, ancestor. The group of dragons saluted. Huang Long was pleased by this. Rise, he said proudly. What are you still doing? Line up to welcome the ancestor. What are you all doing? Don't you have any manners? Where is the honor guard? The ancestor has returned, and there is no fanfare. Playing music, making merry, and setting up a banquet. Long Chang's dragon claws pointed as he directed the group of dragons to line up. He also instructed some of the monster tribes affiliated with the dragon tribe to set up a big banquet in the dragon palace. They also composed music and organized beautiful clam girls to perform a dance. The black dragon's face was extremely dark, and he was breathing heavily from his nostrils. Long Chang's smug appearance was simply detestable. "What are you doing? Hurry up and get ready. You're staring at me." Long Chang raised his claws and smacked the black dragon's head. "You're not convinced." He turned around and looked at Huang Long in a flattering manner. He pointed his finger at the black dragon and said, "Ancestor, he's not convinced." "Pa!" Huang Long waved his claw from afar and slapped the black dragon's head. It almost cracked the black dragon's head open. Fortunately, Huang Long knew that these dragons were weak, so he did not use much strength. The black dragon was terrified. "Ancestor, I'll do it now." He quickly went off to assign tasks to the other dragons. Dragon Palace. Huang Long had shrunk his body and sat on the throne. Long Chang was waiting on him at the side in a flattering manner. He took out all the rare treasures to entertain Huang Long. He found out that Huang Long liked to eat delicious food. Hence, he only prepared some extremely delicious, rare spiritual fruits, and specially brewed wine. Long Tuo and Long Zheng were released. They obediently paid their respects to Huang Long. They had to. Huang Long was simply too terrifying. Perhaps he really was some unknown old ancestor of the dragon tribe. "Ancestor, you can eat and drink while I get the younger generation to come and pay their respects to you," Long Chang said in a flattering manner. "Very well, little Chang, go ahead." Huang Long was very satisfied. Long Chang turned around, looked at Long Tuo and the rest, and said, "Learn how to respect your ancestors. How could you behave like that earlier?" Long Tuo and the others almost exploded in anger, but they could only hold it in. Long Chang left, satisfied, while Huang Long continued to eat and drink. The outside world was truly too exciting. There was so much delicious food. "Taoist brother Chu, you're the one who allowed me to regain my freedom." After Long Chang went out for a while, rows of younger dragons came to pay their respects to Huang Long. Those in the front were naturally the juniors who had a direct relationship with Long Chang. Huang Long raised his dragon claws and was about to give these juniors some greeting gifts. As their ancestor, how could he not give a few small gifts to the younger generation? Long Chang appeared at the right time. "Ancestor, there's no need to give these juniors such precious treasures. Otherwise, you will spoil them. Let me give them some gifts on your behalf instead." Huang Long felt that it made sense. The things that he had casually given out were all treasures. "Little Chang, you're right." Huang Long nodded. He raised his claws, and a small bead exuding the power of time appeared. "I'll give this to you." Long Chang was ecstatic. This is a time pearl, and it contains the power of the laws of time. As long as you activate it, you can hide within time itself and avoid danger. You can also use it to resurrect yourself, Huang Long explained. "Thank you for your kindness, ancestor." Long Chang was so excited that his heart was trembling. It was a treasure. This was equivalent to him having an extra life. Even Long Tuo's eyes turned red when he saw this. A time-related treasure. In the chaos, time was one of the few things that was difficult to cultivate. Other than the legendary existences, who could use time to reverse time to a certain extent, even World Creator Realm experts could not manipulate time very much if they did not comprehend the Time Tao principle. It was rumored that time was one of the supreme laws of the chaos. Time was like a river, flowing without end. One could sense the passage of time, but could not capture it. Could it be that this mysterious old ancestor had already reached that legendary realm? Long Tuo and Long Zheng were filled with regret. They should have paid their respects to the ancestor at the first possible moment. Unfortunately, they had missed this opportunity, which was taken by Long Chang, this cunning dragon. "Everyone, come and pay your respects to the ancestor." The group of younger dragons all paid their respects to Huang Long, which put him in an even better mood, and he ate even more. This made Long Tuo and the other dragons speechless. Had the ancestor not eaten before? Huang Long had become the ancestor of the dragon tribe. As such, the fate of the dragon tribe also began to change. Chu Zan knew that Huang Long had left. Surprisingly, Huang Long did not enter the 9 zones, but went out into the chaos. He went to the dragon tribe's territory and became an ancestor. In terms of age, Huang Long was actually much younger than the other dragons. However, he had extraordinary origins as a creature of the Great Tao, which were made even more extraordinary when he became a creature of the Heavenly Tao. After all, the Heavenly Tao cause had more potential than the original Great Tao of the 9 zones. Huang Long was not weak either, and was comparable to a World Creator Realm expert whose Tao path had reached 3 million miles long, and that was before he used the power of the Heavenly Tao laws. Other than that, he was also the Jade Dragon of Time. As long as time existed, he would not die. It was not easy to estimate his true strength. If Huanglong could fully control the laws of time, he would have the power of a Chaos Supreme expert. Furthermore, unless time itself was destroyed, he would live on. The birth of Huanglong was most likely related to the Lord of Chaos, who was born to protect the Great Tao and the Lord of Chaos along with the other creatures of the Great Tao.